I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Cindy.
And we're here with another 40-day prosperity feeding frenzy. And this is day 14.
Right. So we're on statement number 4. Through my consciousness of my God self, the Christ within, as my source, I draw into my mind and feeling nature the very substance of spirit. This substance is my supply. Thus my consciousness of the presence of God within me is my supply.
Mm. So you know what came to me as soon as you read that? That is saying whenever, almost like, do you remember the old ink pens where you had to actually use ink, the actual liquid ink, and draw it into the pen in order to write? That is basically telling me that every time I turn my focus inward and draw upon that well, I am actually pulling into my system, into my consciousness, into my present, the entirety, all of God, right then. So every time I dip my pen into the ink, I am drawing into myself God.
You know,
So that, to me, was the answer of how do I tap that source?
You know what that just reminded me of?
What?
You know how when you spill something on the counter and you put a paper towel down, you just put the corner in it and you just
Just
wicks it out?
Yeah.
That's cool.
So, to answer that question, I've asked, I know, several times myself, and this is a first for me. This is the first that's come to me. How do I tap that source? If it's internal, how do I tap that source? And for it to be as simple as every time I just open to it, change my thought to, bring it forward. I'm dipping my pen into that well. And it's just, like you said, like a paper towel, it's just absorbing
Soaking it
and
up.
drawing it in.
Soaking it up. And I just thought about the lady who touched the hem of Jesus' garment and was instantly
Ooh, good one.
healed. Because, if we could have that much God stuff pouring out of us at all times, if we could soak up that much so that it's just overflowing and coming out of us, that even when people touched our hem of our garment, that they just soak it up like that
They get
napkin.
what they need, yeah.
Isn't that cool?
That is cool.
That's very cool. Through my consciousness of my God self, the Christ within as my source, I draw into my mind and feeling nature the very substance of spirit. So what is it? We talked about this before when we did it. The consciousness of my God self, the Christ within. Why does he put both of those there? The consciousness of my God self, the Christ within as my source.
Because I think he's addressing our inner layer, our true...
Our inner what?
Our inner layer is what I meant to say, but our true nature, the core of that onion. We have many, many skins, but we got to get through the skins to get to the nature of who we are.
So is he saying the God self is the Christ within?
Oh, I think so. Yes, definitely.
As
I think
my
it's one and the
source.
same. And that is my source.
Right. So God self, Christ within, and source are all the same.
I think it's the
exact
same thing.
same
It's the same for me as calling my higher power, God, spirit, universe,
Whatever.
energy, love. It's all the same to me. It all means the same to me.
So through my consciousness of that, God, Christ, and source, I draw into my mind, and we talked about the drawing in, and feeling nature, the very substance of spirit. So that ink, that water, and the paper towel.
Why do you think he brought to mind through? Why didn't he just say through you? Why did he say through your God self, your Christ within?
Oh, because I don't think my ego would get in the way. If my God part of me isn't involved, then my ego's going to wipe it all out,
You ever used when I think about that, I think about a straw. And it's got a crack in it. Have you ever used a straw? It's got a crack in it, and you could draw on it and draw on it and draw on it, and you're getting more air than you are anything else. Yes, it'll still pull a little bit, but when I turn that straw upside down and put the cracked end down in the fluid, that's when it's really strong, starting to pull through it. So I think he used the word through to remind us that we do have all of these layers, or that I may have maybe a straw with a crack in it, and I need to put the right end in.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
That I have to go through the right layer in order to get the connection that I want
That's
to.
good.
Yeah, that made me think of that.
That's good. Well, have you ever tried to do anything? I mean, it was a good thing, but you're trying it for all the wrong reasons,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
and it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. I remember, well, I won't go into all that, but I used to when I would sing at church, and I would get the big head sometimes, and then, oh my gosh, talk about screwing up, you know. And there were other times when
You're not going to start a story and leave me
Yes.
hanging, are you?
Well, I mean, there were several times I would get the big head thinking, oh, I sound so good, and then, boy, those were the times I sounded horrible.
Really?
Yeah. Okay, so this substance is my supply. Thus, my consciousness of the presence of God within me is my supply.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is that saying that he hasn't said already? This substance is my supply. So that's stuff we draw in. Thus, my consciousness of the presence.
So let's talk about the stuff you draw in. What is it you're drawing in?
Well,
How
he
can I
says-
turn around and create this little R reality, this world that I live in here on planet Earth, in this body? How do I create what I've got surrounding me if this is the substance that they're talking about, a substance that I can't physically see or taste or hear or whatever? Do you know what I'm saying? What is this substance we're drawing forth then?
It's God. I think it's that energy. It's the stuff that everything's made out of. You know, we draw it into ourselves, into our mind and feeling nature, and then that, in my mind, that creates new thoughts, and that's how I create, is by the thoughts that substance is causing me to think.
So we're drawing into the nature of God, which is
Mm-hmm.
energy, light.
Right. Well,
Wow.
when we look at things from
That
God's
kind of thing.
perspective,
Mhm.
where God doesn't take sides and God doesn't, choose one of us over the other, and God doesn't, He loves us all. When we look at things from His perspective, everything just goes better. You know. So the substance of God, the substance which is God, is what gives us those creative ideas,
Right.
and creative thoughts,
And the
to
energy
create.
to do it, and
Right, and everything we need,
the
all
resources that we
resources.
need, or the people that are supposed to be
Mm-hmm.
there, just show up. I mean, whenever I've heard it said several times, I couldn't tell you who said it, but I've heard it said several times that when the student's ready, the teacher appears.
Right.
And I
Right.
think that was part of that drawing.
Right.
So-
Well, we've both seen with our kids, when they think they know everything, when they are depending on themselves, they don't learn anything.
Mhm.
But when they're open and they're willing to listen, and it's the same with us, when we acknowledge that it's not us that's doing it, it's the God stuff in us that's doing it, then we can do so much more than if we think, oh, I can do this, and just depend on the part of us that's not God, our ego part.
Well, when we do that, then we're limiting.
Exactly, because we can't
What
do
it can
anything
do.
right without the God stuff being a part of it, and we can just cut off that supply
Mm-hmm.
when we don't acknowledge that it's there. So I think that's what this whole thing's trying to get us to, is once we acknowledge that part of ourselves that is God,
That does
and
the
give it
actual work.
full control, then the sky's the limit. But as soon as we don't acknowledge that as being the catalyst that makes it work, then we cut it off.
Mhm. Or we limit it.
Right. Wow.
That's good stuff.
Wow. So I'm going to replace it now with God.
Okay.
Through my consciousness of my God, the God within, as my God, I draw into my mind and feeling nature the very substance of God. This substance is my supply. Thus my consciousness of the God within me is my supply.
Mm.
That pretty much brings it home, doesn't it?
It does. It does. When you replaced it, it reminded me of my ownership.
Mm.
Do you see?
Mhm.
When you're talking about my God,
Mm-hmm.
that brought it back to personal.
Mm-hmm.
How I understand God,
Right. Through the consciousness of my God,
the way I
the
understand
God within.
the God within, which is different than the way you understand
Right.
God and how God works in
But I
your
think
life.
the way we think of it limits us sometimes.
Yes.
Or takes the limits off, whichever way you want to look at it.
Mhm.
So, I think, okay, even though you and I both know and believe in God, the way we believe in God sometimes limits us, whereas it doesn't the other one. That is good. Through my consciousness.
Well, I think that's why
of
these
God.
conversations help.
Uh-huh.
Because my understanding may not be the same as your understanding, and you may shed light on something and I have a different perspective on, and vice versa.
Right.
So I think that's why this is so important as well as the comments.
Well, and each time we do it, my concept of God grows
and changes.
and changes and becomes much bigger than I ever dreamed it could, which is very cool.
That is cool. That is cool. Now change it to energy and see if it does.
Through my consciousness of my energy, the energy within as my energy, I draw into my mind and feeling nature the very substance of energy. This substance is my supply, thus my consciousness of the energy within me is my supply. What does that do?
Well, that changes it again, because then I'm no longer thinking about
Something outside
something outside of me, but me, that powers me when I'm thinking about the energy. You know what I'm saying? And I think about the projects or whatever it is that I'm wanting to do and the energy I put behind it. Well, as soon as I change my thought to remember that I have my own supply,
Right. And my own energy, my own power.
and my own energy and my own power, then the energy I put behind it is only limited by what I can imagine it will be, or it could be, or it is.
Right. You know what it does for me? It's almost as if moving me from a victim role to a I can do
Good
anything
point.
wrong.
Yeah.
Because, I can sit around and say, oh, I wish I had money. I wish I had this. I wish I had that. I wish I did this. I wish I did that. And this moves it from, okay.
Then what are you waiting on?
Yeah, it's all me anyway, so why not just go and get those
get
things?
it. Yeah. Go get it.
Go bring that money in. Or go do it. Don't just sit around and wish for it. Go do it.
Well,
So
but how many
it's your
times
power.
when you have wished for that, have you gotten something that you could have turned into something
Oh, every time.
grand?
If
You know,
I'm
a
listening,
million dollar idea. if you
every
will.
time.
And how many are you acting on?
There's the key. I have $1 million ideas every day. But do I act on any of them? Some of them, but not nearly enough. Or I'd be a multimillionaire. But I think the potential's there. I think we could have more than we could handle if we're listening close enough and paying attention and acting
And acting.
on those nudges. I know one time we went to Edwin's, the question she asked, which she always asks one, at least, is what nudges have you got that you haven't acted upon yet? I was like, oh, ouch. Or what has God told you to do that you haven't done yet?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that hurts. Because there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
And how many, it only takes one of those to make me a millionaire.
True.
It only takes
I
one
mean,
of
look at
those.
the rubber band guy. We were just talking about that this morning.
Yeah, that makes us.
My son that breaks those rubber band bracelets, and I can't tell you the many rubber bands I picked up off his floor.
Just
That
today.
guy's a billionaire
Selling
over a rubber
bands.
band. Over a rubber band. Okay, well that started as $1 million idea. It really did. But what's the difference between you and me and him? He acted on it.
You did something about it.
He did something about it. Okay, so how many ideas are we getting on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, on a minute basis that we don't act on? That could have been,
Yeah, right. And I believe a lot of them we don't act on because we don't believe we can do it.
That's it in a nutshell.
And we can do anything we want to do if we just put our mind to it and don't let anybody talk
God.
us out of it.
With God,
With God.
all things are
Right.
possible.
If we acknowledge that the God within us can do anything, then there's no limit.
Then that truly means God's got this.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Shree.